Hello and welcome to Scout Report, where today we're looking at 3 players causing headaches for their coaches this season. Harry Maguire. Here at Football Daily, we generally like to look past the dominant narratives and take an objective look at the game. But while the conversation around Harry Maguire this season has the hysterical tone we've long come to associate with Manchester United, the fans aren't wrong. Something is up with the England captain. It wouldn't be surprising to find Maguire running on empty. The defender missed just 4 league matches in the 2 seasons before this one, and despite missing the opening 2 games of England's Euro 2020 campaign, played the rest of the tournament, going to extra time twice. While this season he's suffered chest and calf injuries and been unable to get a decent rest thanks to Varane's fitness and Lindelof contracting COVID-19. On top of all this, United have been asked to play a radically different style under Ralf Rangnick, adopting a high press without a pre-season to learn the system, and with the club's notoriously poor midfield offering little protection for the defence. And as a consequence, the Red Devils' back line has been shaky, giving up a whopping 1.4 expected goals a game to rank 13th in the Premier League, between Everton and Southampton. A fairly embarrassing outcome, and one blamed rightly or wrongly on the world's most expensive defender. You can understand that, as an £80 million centre-half would be expected to make your defence at least competent, but Maguire is simply the worst he's been since his switch to Manchester. At present, he gets dribbled past 0.6 times a game, more than in any Premier League season since he left Hull, and while Varane is beaten more often, he makes up for it by winning possession more regularly, with 1.7 tackles a game and a 71% success rate compared to the Englishman's 1 tackle and 63% success rate. Admittedly, Maguire has never been a big tackler, but the abilities which made United buy him also seem to be waning. Previously adept at stepping out and making interceptions, with 1.9 ranking joint first in the squad over the last 2 campaigns, he's dropped to just 0.8 a match since the beginning of 2021-22, possibly a sign of diminished athleticism, or perhaps simply because he's scared of being beaten, due to the incessant public criticism. And if the fans have been tough on him, refs have been far from lenient too, with Maguire's fouls per 90 dropping to 0.6 from 0.9 last term, but cards going up, with 6 yellows and a red in just 21 league appearances at the time of writing. Yet more evidence that United need to break up play further upfield to prevent their skipper risking dismissal. And while the focus this season has been on the decline in Maguire's defending, his ball playing is on the slide as well. He currently ranks 5th in the United squad for passes per game, but his 48 per 90 is his lowest in 4 years, while balls into the final third have slipped from 5.7 to 4.4, the difference between the top 5% of centre-backs and top 20. He's also lost the confidence to make the marauding runs which made his name, carrying the ball forward 4 times a game, down from 6. In short, he's become an average Premier League defender, not the worst thing in the world to be, but not exactly what supporters expect, and particularly costly given the improvements at Arsenal and West Ham, and Antonio Conte's appointment at Tottenham Hotspur. It may only be a run of bad form or slow adaptation to a season of instability, with Ralf Rangnick admitting being as proactive with that kind of defence when we try and be on the front foot is something new to him, and it will take some time for him to get used to that. But if Maguire can't find his feet soon and convince the next Old Trafford boss that he can fit the system, his time at United could be destined for a sour ending. Granit Xhaka. With Spurs, West Ham and United all struggling for consistency, Arsenal have surprisingly found themselves favourite for 4th spot ahead of the run-in, but a thin squad remains an issue for Mikel Arteta. Despite a huge summer spending spree which remade the club's defence, the Spanish tactician was not able to alter his midfield significantly, and when he turned down multiple approaches for Granit Xhaka from Jose Mourinho's Roma, it was felt he'd had no choice in the matter, with Arsenal facing a long season with only Xhaka, Partey, Lokonga, El Neni and Maitland-Niles available in the centre. But while depth was certainly a factor in Arteta's decision, especially with Maitland-Niles having completed his own switch to Italy and Lokonga notably lightweight, the full truth is potentially more concerning for the Gunners. Arsenal are still reliant on Xhaka. If they weren't, there'd be no reason to keep the 29-year-old around. Of the 15 red cards Arsenal have suffered under Arteta, Xhaka has been responsible for 3, and only Lacazette and Partey are committing more fouls per game than his 1.8 this season, while he's averaged over 2 a match across his time in England. That could potentially be forgiven if he won possession a lot. After all, Wilfred and Ndidi fouls at a similar rate, but 3.7 tackles and interceptions a game is only middling despite being his best figure since he arrived at Arsenal. And his 14 pressures a game ranks in the bottom 14% of midfielders, leaving him out of place in a side steadily moving towards a Guardiola-style high press. However, what Xhaka does have is an excellent left foot, and that's been enough to keep him in the lineup. Since his return to the club, Arteta has been keen to restore the North Londoners to their roots as a possession side, and this season they're one of 9 Premier League teams to have averaged over 50% of the ball, despite having spent a good portion of the campaign down a man. So that means they've needed players who can set the tempo, and whatever his failings, the Swiss can do that. He ranks 4th at the club for passes per game so far this season, but more importantly, he is capable of moving the ball upfield in a way most of the Gunners' XI is not. 76% of the long balls he attempts find their target, a better rate than anyone else at the club. And though Lokonga, Gabriel and Tomiyasu get more touches than him, he still passes into the final third more often than anyone else, a whopping 6.6 times per 90, which is way ahead of second place Partey on 5.4, ranks 9th among all Premier League players. Progressive passes, balls which move the team more than 10 yards upfield, tell a similar story, with 6 a match sitting top of the squad and this time 12th in the division. But the downside of Xhaka's influence on the ball is the high cost when he makes an error, as he has done time and time again in a red and white shirt. Not content just to hand opponents points with reckless challenges, he can also get complacent in possession and put his side under pressure with boneheaded giveaways, a tendency best exemplified in the 1-1 draw against Burnley last season, when he thumped the ball into Chris Wood and into the Arsenal goal. In fact, between that and his red against the Clarets in a game Arsenal were dominating, with the shot count at 12-2 at the time of his dismissal, he cost the Gunners 5 points in those games alone last season, the difference between their 8th place finish and 5th. Arteta clearly believes that Xhaka provides more value overall than he subtracts, and given his alternatives in the engine room, it's easy to understand why he persists with the Swiss. But as long as Arsenal continue to rely on him, their midfield will have too little mobility and too much stupidity, meaning replacement plans should be a high priority as the club attempts to re-establish itself among the league's best sides. If rumours are right and Mourinho returns for Xhaka this summer, it seems like the right time to let him go. Toni Kroos. If our previous choices were too obvious for you, our third and final shout should entice you towards the dislike button. Toni Kroos is now in his 8th season at Real Madrid and hunting his 3rd title, and remains vital to the side with just 6 players putting up more minutes than him this term. But while he's far from finished, it's not a good look for a super club to be reliant on the German at 32 and Luka Modric at 36. And the continued presence of the veterans in the lineup over younger options like Valverde and Camavinga goes some way to explaining where Real find themselves in the European pecking order, with a huge gap between the 13-time continental champions and their Premier League rivals. However, unlike Real Madrid, Kroos still looks the part, with his incredible passing ability arguably enhanced by his experience. 90 passes a match, 12 final third entries, and 10 progressive passes all rank in the top 1% of midfielders. And thanks to his set pieces, Kroos creates plenty of chances too, with an outstanding 2.4 a game from a deep position. But while these stats are good for him, they're less good for the club. Everything still runs through the old guys, with Kroos, Modric, Marcelo and 30-year-old Casemiro 4 of Real Madrid's top 5 ball progressors. And while that's an indication of those players' influence, it's a recipe for a bumpy future once they're all gone, and could explain why they followed their UCL three-peat with 2 round of 16 exits and lost out on the domestic title last year to an unremarkable Atletico outfit. Put simply, there's too little energy in the side. Only 4 teams in Spain press less than the Merengues, and Kroos' defensive output, which previously just edged into the acceptable range, is now firmly in oh god territory. He makes 2.4 tackles and interceptions a game, about the same as Marco Asensio and Vinicius Jr., and ranking below 85% of midfielders, and presses the opposition 15 times, placing him in the bottom third of all CMs. And perhaps most telling is the fact that he doesn't get dribbled past all that much, just 0.7 times a game, a stat that looks good on the face of it, but here suggests that Kroos isn't even in position to inconvenience opponents, and lacks serious defensive resistance. So Kroos is playing a more limited role on a worse team, but ultimately his failings are less than those of Real as a whole. Had Florentino Perez made some interesting decisions over the last few years, we could have seen Antonio Conte or Thomas Tuchel at the Bernabeu, and it's easy to imagine how either coach could have prolonged Kroos' peak in the way they've done for Pirlo or Jorginho, surrounding the former Bayern man with energetic runners who could protect him out of possession and make the most of his world-class vision with it. In essence, Kroos is the best possible version of Xhaka, talented but worryingly necessary to a team which should be moving on. Madrid need to find a way to live without him before he becomes a symbol of stagnation. So that was 3 players holding their manager back, but do you agree with our choices? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, do give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more great content. This video was researched and written by Patrick Van Straten and narrated and edited by myself, Danny Pape. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.